The 2022 documentary Subject by Jennifer Teixeira and Camilla Hall is unsurprisingly concerned with the ethical relationship between a documentarian and their subject. In the film, subjects from 5 documentaries, The Staircase, The Square, Hoop Dreams, The Wolfpack, and Capturing the Freedmans, are interviewed about how the films have impacted their lives. The doc, segmented by examinations of each film's subjects, illustrates the many challenges and consequences of trying to maintain ethics in documentary filmmaking. The first section of the film, which interviews Margie Ratliff, daughter of Michael Peterson, the primary subject of The Staircase, demonstrates the thorny gray areas that surround the ethics of consent and the ethics of production impact, which we discussed in lecture. In The Staircase, the documentary crew follow the trial of Peterson after he's accused of murdering his wife, Margie's mother. The crew was given incredible amounts of access to the family's private life, spending months getting to know the family, including the children, who were very young when the doc was produced. They were given this access expressly because Michael Peterson thought that the documentary would help in exonerating him, as is referenced in Subject. But as a documentary following a criminal trial, John Xavier de Lestrade, the director of the docuseries, is held to a certain level of accountability to examine, uncover, and accurately represent the purported and litigated truth of the crime, whether that exonerates Peterson or not. Specifically, he is held to the account of his audience and his funders. These two lines of accountability exist because the audience believe that they are watching something that is truthful, and funders believe they are invested in something that is financially worthwhile and free of too much adverse risk, which an unfactual documentary in this scenario certainly would classify as. As such, they did not make Peterson's goal their agenda. So in that way, the documentary does maintain an ethical relationship to the truth of its subject matter, but arguably violates the ethical relationship between itself and its subjects. Peterson consented to the documentarians filming the trial because he wrongly believed it would have a net positive impact on his life. Similarly, the children participated in the documentary because they believed that they were helping their father. Now, the reason I use the word participate instead of consented is because it is not exactly clear if we can classify their participation in this documentary as truly consenting. While the children were of legal consenting age and may have verbally and I'm sure legally consented to being a part of the film, they were still incredibly young adults dealing with a situation they had no preparation for. As Margie reflects on in Subject, she was so young and so freshly grieving the loss of her mother, she couldn't have made a truly informed decision about participating at that age. Not to mention the imbalance of power created by her father asking them to do it, with the stakes set of it being a tool to exonerate him. Now, I do not believe, based off my knowledge of The Staircase or what is presented in Subject, that the documentarians necessarily promised exoneration, but I do believe it is clear that the children and perhaps Peterson himself only consented to being a part of the series because they believed that exoneration would be the effect. That being said, ethically, it shouldn't be the responsibility of the filmmakers to promise that, but it does seem that the filmmakers likely crossed an ethical boundary of consent by involving the children in the film as they had no conception of the impact it would have on their lives. They couldn't foresee that it wouldn't in fact clear their father's name, nor could they foresee how famous The Staircase would become, with it even getting an HBO limited series recreation at the time of production on Subject. As the documentary paints it, The Staircase has had a haunting effect on Margie's life. It is a constant reminder of her mother's death and the turmoil of that time. And because of the legacy of the show, it seems that that turmoil is never ending and her privacy never respected. This calls into question the actual purpose of the documentary. Was it just a piece of entertainment? And if so, is the negative impact it has had on its subjects worth the value of that entertainment? However, as a counter-argument, in the same way the subjects of this particular documentary couldn't foresee its production impact, neither could the documentarians. And in fact, Margie says that the crew became very close to the Petersons, with the editor even becoming romantically involved with her father. So she says that her main issue is with the documentary and not the filmmakers. But how much can we separate the filmmakers and their subjects from the actual effects in the real of the documentary itself? It is in this way that the ethics of documentaries become ever more complex as real-world people and their complicated lives become entangled with the producers of the documentary. Furthermore, an interesting comparison can be drawn between The Staircase and another documentary featured in Subject, Capturing the Freedmans. In that case, the film does end up having a direct impact in exonerating its subject, Jesse Friedman, who had been convicted for sodomy and sexual abuse of young boys. As Jesse frames it, the film made him seen, made him no longer invisible, and directly led to his 15-year conviction coming to an end. It even led to him meeting his longtime partner, Lisbeth Walsh. So there exists this exact opposite example to the staircase in one regard, where the documentary has had this incredible beneficial on its subject, but in another regard also involves this intense entangling of the subject with its documentarians romantically and socially, at least as it seems on its surface. What is very curious about this example in the documentary is that during the initial section examining Jesse, it seems completely positive. But by the end of subject, a switch has occurred, where his partner has now suddenly left him, and both Jesse and Elizabeth view the documentary as this dark cloud that has defined Jesse's later life. What's switched is unclear, but it depicts a similar ending to Margie, with the documentary having this deep, negative, psychological impact on its subjects, with both subjects wishing to completely divorce their respective films from their lives. Between these two examples, it would seem inevitable that regardless of good intentions on behalf of the filmmakers, that documentaries of this type are always destined to leave a scar. A quote from Subject that I find particularly illuminating is made by Tom Powers, a programmer at the Toronto International Film Festival early on into the documentary. He says, "Documentary films are an intervention in people's lives. A documentary is not capturing someone's story, it's becoming part of someone's story. When it goes out into the world, the person is transformed by that." This is effectively shown by the examples of Margie and Jesse, and it echoes the idea of the observer effect, which states that by simply observing something, we change it. I think this is well explored by Subject, and not just in the negative examples we've talked about here. In The Square, the main subject is the documentarian. In Hoop Dreams, the success of the documentary has direct financial benefits for its subjects, and in The Wolfpack, it seems the documentary has a direct domino effect in liberating the family at the film's center. Clearly, documentaries do have the ability to positively change people's lives, but I think what is shown in Subject is that even with positive intentions, docs can also leave a trail of ruin in their wake. Ethical decisions in documentary filmmaking are not binary. They are not as simple as making a good decision or a bad decision. They are ultimately about minimizing the harm in the observation and intervention of the filmmaking itself.